People always say that you should invest for retirement, and I agree, you really should invest for retirement. But I do think that you need to take some time and look at your investment portfolio and make sure that when you're investing for retirement, you're investing for the world that you want to see when you get to retirement. Because let's be honest here, if you're just doing the basic S&P 500 index fund or a similar index fund that just tracks the overall market, you're actually partaking in ownership of companies that are destroying the moral fiber of America. Entire sections of the economy are predicated upon anti-human and anti-biblical behaviors and business models that may produce a profit in the short term, and maybe even over the long term they'll produce a monetary profit, but overall they're extracting value from people who are providing real value. Does that make sense? Like, for instance, the financial companies, and it's such a meme at this point to just say, oh, it's the banks, the banks own everything, whatever. But I mean, really, when you think about it, you have to deposit your money in a bank in order to do basic transactions for the most part, unless you somehow manage to get paid in cash from your employer. Most employers are going to end up giving you a check or doing a direct deposit to some kind of financial institution. So you're kind of like handicapped and you have to use them just to get your basic pay and wages. And when you deposit them, they're using those deposits to then lend out to other businesses or for mortgages or for auto loans, things of that nature, and the consumer spending. And so the more capital that's available for that, the more people are going to be able to purchase things that they can't afford. The more things that they can purchase that they can't afford, the higher the prices can go, because there is an inflated demand for those items, because people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford them can afford them. And so when they afford them, and the demand goes up, that means that the price that they can justify goes up as well. And people just purchasing it think, oh, well, I can afford the payment, so therefore I can afford it. And, then they can charge even more. Right? So that's one way of extraction. Meanwhile, the bank who made the loan, or the financial institution that made the loan, is getting whatever the going rate is for interest, right? And usury in itself is an anti-biblical practice. You can write a whole book about that. Nehemiah says even 1% interest is too much. He had to go talk to the governing authorities and all the bankers and people who were lending out money at 1% interest and rebuke them. And meanwhile, we got 6%, 5%. I've seen for consumer credit cards are 20-something%. Some are even higher than that. And so I used to think that usury was charging too much interest, but even 1% is too much. So
nope.
I think in general it's a bad practice. So if you're going back to the investment idea, if you are invested in all these different banks and financial institutions, you are morally culpable for charging that interest. You are morally culpable for manipulating these various markets that permit financing. And you have to face the reality that the consequences of your actions are going to compound over the course of your life. And when you retire, what kind of world do you want to be in? We're living in the world right now that our parents and our grandparents decided for us through their investments and how they decided to spend their time, their capital, their resources, etc. So personally, and look, man, I'm not your financial advisor and I'm not your spiritual advisor, but I do think that you should take a hard look and see if it aligns with your morals at least. Because I was looking through, I was heavily invested in the S&P 500 because I was doing the Dave Ramsey thing where, just set it on autopilot and don't think about it and collect your 10 to 13% or whatever the average has been for the S&P 500 per year. Just keep on adding to it. But I was looking at the mix of companies that are actually in the S&P 500 in various different sectors, and of course, like, I ended up just having to throw out all of the financial companies because I couldn't trust them. And then when you think about even the construction companies, I looked into their websites and they offer their financing through their own company. You know, and if I'm staying true to my principles, I don't want to be morally culpable for those practices. You know, I mean, all the tobacco companies that are causing cancer and whatnot, and promoting all this stuff, and various entertainment industries that heavily rely on pornographic or semi-pornographic material. Companies that make gambling machines to trick people out of their wealth, with the allure of gain, quick unearned gain. You know, you just compound all these different things, and I ended up with maybe about 90 companies that I could at least see their core business model as morally acceptable. You know, I probably need to do more due diligence as well in terms of looking into other things that they're involved with. But, you know, like energy sector, like everybody needs lights, running water, you know, refrigerator needs to work so you can keep your food cold. Businesses need to be able to run so that they can process, you know, transactions and move resources around. I ended up staying with Amazon because even though Amazon has almost become a monopoly, like, I feel like they do a lot of good for the world. Like, before Amazon came along, no one had even heard of like 2-day shipping, and for a while there they had 1-day shipping, you know, which is actually really impressive that they were able to logistically figure that out. And the amount of time saved by individuals, I think, kind of almost outweighs like some of the less savory things that they do. You know, once again, I'm not your spiritual advisor. You got to make those decisions for yourself of what you think you can stand before God and justify your portfolio. I also stuck with some of the fast food companies because despite the unhealthy reputation that a lot of these brands have, it is convenient for a lot of people, and it does save a lot of time for folks, especially people who are, you know, really busy, or they don't even have their own kitchen to cook in. You know, like, I mean, some people really just don't even have a kitchen to cook in. Like, that's kind of wild to think about. But they need, you know, they deserve hot food too, I think, because I don't know their story. I'm not going to judge and say like, oh, well, you just eat go down to the Kroger and eat just a cold apple. I mean, that's good too, but you know, fast food can be nice. Put something warm on your stomach. Get a nice bean burrito from Taco Bell. So I stayed in like Yum Brands. I did stay in what's it called? Lowe's and Home Depot. I mean, I don't really see any issue with Lowe's and Home Depot. I know they have credit cards, so that might be an issue. I need to look more into that. But I think like a line of credit isn't inherently evil, especially when you're dealing with something like construction, because you do need to like purchase materials and then use those materials to build, and then, you know, hope that the market is good enough to give you a return on your investment. And sometimes you don't know until the end if it's going to be profitable. So sometimes the line of credit can give you flexibility, and especially, you know, I guess if they are giving like 6-month 0% interest, then that might give them enough time, like, to get the house sold. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a little gray area with the Lowe's and the Home Depot, but I still think that the services and value that they provide in like their core business model is appropriate enough to my morality that I'm going to hold on to that. Gosh, what else did I do? There were a few materials companies that I had to get rid of just because of like human rights violations.
Nope.
And just overall shadiness. Like sometimes people get to the top because they're hardworking and they're diligent and they do very well and they hire the right people, and they expand very well and know how to scale things. And then other times they like go the cheating route. They bribe government officials. They use the cheapest possible labor that they can find around the world, and they exploit various regions of the world. And, I could just throw my hands up and say, oh, well, people are evil. What are you going to do? I just want my money. But, like, I don't know. That doesn't sit well with me. So, anyway, I'm going to put the list up of the various companies that I did stick around with. There are a few more that I think probably would have been okay, too. But I just narrowed it down to these. I mean, fundamentally, when you're sitting down at the retirement home and your grandkids come in, if you even have grandkids at that point, and they ask you, oh, hey, grandma, grandpa, you're financially stable. What did you invest in when you were younger? What did you put all your money and time and effort into and save for retirement? Are you going to sit there and tell them, oh, well, just whatever would make me the most money, whatever, seemed to promise a good return, I just decided to do that. If I had to cheat, steal, lie, if I had to make people, who are gambling addicts just give away their money, I would do whatever it took to make sure that I did not end up in poverty. Are you going to sit there and tell your kid that and encourage them to do the same? I mean, look at where the world is now. Look where the world will be in 40, 50, 60 years when some of us retire. I guess if you're watching this and you're a bit older, then, it'll probably be shorter. But, yeah, man. I mean, I'd rather it take slightly longer to retire than live in a world where I'm the owner of a company that's just doing terrible stuff, Now you might say, Adam, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate your heart, man. That's all good and well, but I don't have time to research these companies. It's easy to just, put it in an index fund. And really, if I didn't do it, other people would do it. So you're not really helping anybody by doing this. You're just kind of, honestly, just being selfish, thinking about your own moral grandstanding. And, there's all these people employed by these companies. So, are you saying that they're wrong for working there? Are you saying that, they should all quit their jobs and go work in the materials industries that don't, exploit workers, et cetera, et cetera? Maybe, yeah, actually, now I'm thinking about it. Maybe that would be good. Maybe that would be better for society. Maybe if we didn't all contribute to killing lungs and killing hearts and killing livers and killing brains in order to make our living, we could focus on more life-giving industries. But as regards the, other people will invest. Bro, what if these companies were like, hey, man, I got an idea. Let's trick people into giving their money away and say that, somebody's going to win some money. Might as well be you,
Nope.
What if they just couldn't find any investors?
Yeah, boy.
What if they had completely, entirely self-fund that venture and nobody in their right mind would ever invest in that because they had a moral standing in their heart that was against what God intended for humanity? Wouldn't that be great? let the evil people just have their own little companies and let them fail.